Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Good Sound Club podcast. As always, I'm Tom, and with me is.
Hey guys, it's Sina.
What's up?
What's up, dude?
We're going to go with. I'm still waiting on some upgrades, but we're just going to shoot the shoot.
Yep.
So, Cena, I have a question for you. Used
hmm
gear. Is it good value?
What is that supposed to mean?
Like, is it worth my time, worth my effort, worth my money to buy
Yeah.
used gear? Maybe something someone recommends, maybe a group of people recommend it, maybe it wins a certain award. You know, is it worth the money I save on used gear?
Yeah, of
Pretty
course it's
much.
worth the money you save. It just, depends on a couple of factors, right? People consider resale value, obviously. I don't think I have to talk too much about that one. But do you really consider the hassle of resale? It's not just enough that, okay, I can get X amount of dollars for it. It's like, how long is it going to take you to sell that thing? And even if it doesn't take you a long time to sell, how long is it going to take you to pack it? Is it a pain in the ass to pack it? If it's just like a pair of headphones or a DAC or something, and you have the original box, sure, it's not really a pain. But um, if it's a pair of tube mono blocks with huge transformers or it's speakers or anything of that nature, it's like you're either stuck between looking for a local sale and waiting a long time, potentially depending on where you live, or you're going to spend a long time packing it and hoping that it doesn't break halfway there. So, um, yeah, but I mean, it's obviously a lot better than coughing up the money up front every single time and taking a loss every single time. So it all depends, like everything.
So you're trading some of your time for value.
Yeah, for sure. If it's something that you can't buy new and just return, which is not a lot of equipment, you can do that for past a certain point, certain level, let's say, then yes.
What can go bad when you buy used? I mean, besides something probably vintage.
Besides the vintage stuff, I mean, I try to kind of analyze this psychological aspect of it of why is this person selling it. Sometimes there's no good reason. Really, it's just people like overspend or they have too much gear and they really want to get rid of something that is good. But it's kind of rare that people actually sell stuff that really is good. Usually they hang on to stuff like that. So I just kind of try to ask myself if it's something I really don't know about, which is not really the case for me anymore, but I used to do this more often, which is, I looked at the person's system, maybe strike up a conversation with them if they're amenable to that, right? People on eBay typically aren't, but people on Audio Mart or AudioGone or, actual sites about audio equipment usually will, talk to you like, hey, what's your system like? How long did you have it for? These basic questions can like, suss some stuff out for you. Um, I have an example of, this was not too long ago, so I kind of already knew about this, but anyway, I'll give you an example. So there was this crazy single-ended triode amp that was like a custom build, and it had um, these really fancy Japanese transformers throughout the whole thing, like really high quality Tango transformers that are really highly sought after, and was using these exotic triodes, and it was a two box amp, so there was like a power supply, um, separate power supply in another box versus the actual amplifier on another box, and the guy only had it for like a week or two, and he was selling it, and that just kind of like put off a red flag. And then I started going through his other ads, and I just saw that this guy had like a lot of good amps, and some of them that he obviously bought, like his ads and his feedback. I mean, this is on Audio Mart, so he's owned a lot of good amps. Some of them that he bought and kept, and some of them that he bought and sold. And if it's like, okay, if this amp is really all that, if it has all this bling on it, these fancy transformers, these exotic tubes, he has the right speakers for it. Why is he selling it? Does it not bring audio nirvana? And I kind of already knew the answer because I was beyond that point. I had already had an experience a couple of years prior where I had purchased an amplifier like that had really fancy direct heated triodes and Japanese transformers and all of the kind of um, exotic parts that people seek, and it was not really satisfying to listen to. So I kind of knew right away as soon as I saw that amp for sale. I was like, oh yeah, this guy had the same experience as me, and he's kind of realized that he likes more humble stuff, and he's just trying to get his money back. So, but it could be someone else sees that ad and their eyes start to water, and they start to think, oh my god, like this is my opportunity to get a really blinged out amp for a discount. So um, I forget what the original question was, but I try to look at kind of red flags. Yeah, kind of try to look at, how long have you had it for? Why are you selling it? What is your system like? Because those things by themselves, if you're trying to build something, trying to have system synergy and, used gear churning through it is it's one of the ways definitely to find that. Those investigative questions by themselves can help you from wasting your time, if not saving you money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I usually see the same few people selling something, not necessarily gear cyclers, but maybe I don't want to say scalpers, but people trying to, you know, buy something on loan and then sell it off, maybe at a slight profit. Maybe there's some fun in that too. But yeah, seeing someone's history, I wouldn't say their impressions are too valuable because I mean, everything sounds usually pretty good when you first get it. I mean, you're like, "Wow, this is sounds different. I think I like it more than whatever I had." So,
Yeah. If I'm ever trying to sell something that someone asks me how it sounds, I just say it was good. It's good.
well,
Because
yeah,
it doesn't matter if I say it's good or it's bad. It doesn't matter if I'm honest or I lie. At the end of the day, it's not going to help them at all until they actually try it, right? It's better that they just try it.
yeah. I mean, let's if it's a reputable brand and people know what it is, unless it's like some crazy DIY build from some, you know, unknown builder. I mean, you've shown me some unknown builders. I'm like, yeah, I would never buy that. That thing looks like it's been dragged across the floor. But I mean, that's the aesthetic. Like
Yeah,
it's like pitch black and there's holes all over it, and it's just like
yeah.
no,
But the problem is that that's some of the best sounding stuff.
yeah,
Sometimes.
it's built for a totally different reason, and but the resale value, right? Like the resale value is totally different. But if I was looking for a
Yeah.
good sound, I wouldn't say I wouldn't be too concerned about it, but, I would hedge my bets, and if it looks good to enough people that I know that I can trust, then, I'll probably go for it.
Well, like I said, once you get past a certain point, there's no choice. Like you have to start buying stuff that's kind of out there. Um, Well, this is not true for everyone. Definitely not for most
Mhm.
people, actually, I'd say. But
Yeah.
definitely for me, I hit a brick wall where I just realized that everything. I don't want to use the word mainstream because makes me sound to be something that I'm not. But kind of a lot of equipment that people know about just wasn't for me. I was very much
Mhm.
not impressed with it, and so I had to look elsewhere. And in looking elsewhere, it just got gradually more and more crazy to where I was buying like amps with Sharpie written on the chassis and holes in them. But that was the only thing that I found satisfying, and so that's just what I pursue now, is just kind of looking at gear that other people think is junk, but I know is something else.
Yeah, and trust me, listeners, he links me a ton of junk, like, it's it's
Stuff that
kind of
looks
incredible.
stuff that looks like junk. It looks like junk.
Sometimes it actually is junk, and you're just trying to test me, I think. You're like, "Yeah,
No,
no,
why would I
no,
do such a thing?
no? Okay, yeah." Yeah, I've been looking at, well, I've been thinking, there's the gear cyclers, the gear hoarders, um, I guess, some fetishists. They'll be like, "Man, I gotta
Hmm.
have every single version of this thing ever because they all sound slightly different, and I gotta have 15 of them, and it's gonna be awesome, and I'm gonna have a group of people, and we're all gonna talk about it, and then we're gonna like, semi gatekeep." But really, what it comes down to for me is like, again, like, anyone that's heard the first episode, like, does it fit my lifestyle? Is the box too big? And I think Sina actually sent me a box that I think might be their perfect size, and I'm pretty excited about it. I'm just waiting
Yeah,
for them to cut the shipping on it because the shipping is way too damn much.
Yeah, so Tom's been looking for a system with a specific set of criteria, right? So speakers that are, I guess, bookshelf sized, you would say, right? Well, you wouldn't use them in a bookshelf, but they can fit there, certainly. I think you wanted a tube amp, right? Was that always the plan?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a tube amp, whatever kind, it doesn't really matter. I've talked to you about this so many times. It's like, "Oh, what if I go with this directly heated triode that, can't even heat up my own room?" Like, I can have an amp that is useless. What if I get one of those, Cena? And you're like, "No,
Yeah,
you don't want a useless amp." Like,
yeah.
this is gonna be a
And
bigger problem than ever, but
Tom is a bit of a cheapskate, which is a good thing. I say that in a very I'm very jealous
yeah.
that he's a cheapskate because I'm the opposite. If I see something, I'll just buy it. Well, at least that's how I was before. I've gradually learned and gotten more and more modest with my tastes, let's say, after owning a lot of expensive and hyped up stuff.
You have a higher criteria to activate the credit card.
That's right. Yes, a higher threshold, if you will. After owning a lot of stuff that was hyped up and kind of everyone said, "Oh man, this is the shit," and I just like, "What the fuck is this?" Um, I've kind of had to accept that it's not really all that, and you don't really want that. Very few people do; they just think they do. So, um,
Yeah.
in that, the point that I'm getting at is we've, I think, this week managed to find Tom a pair of speakers and an amp that is going to fit his lifestyle. And I think it's going to do so very well. Should we talk about the speakers?
Sure, let's talk
Do you
about
want
them.
to wait till you get them? All right, let's talk about it. So, I was looking.
I wanted to
Yeah,
say, if they're a huge disappointment, I mean, fuck it, like, I'm gonna talk about that too, but, it is
yeah, yeah.
exciting, like, for me, like, the hunt, not everything can satisfy the hunt, like, there's so
Right.
many things that come very close, it's like, "Ah, do I want this?" For a while, I've been looking at the LS35A, I'm like, "Wow, those are, like, the most audiophile-y, street creddy,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
fetishist speaker ever on the planet," but they have so many flaws if you're
Yes.
being realistic about them.
Yes.
And yeah, they're not for me. Also, I'm not gonna pay 3 grand for a pair of speakers that I know I won't be satisfied with because they're all new parts and magnetics and whatever. But go on, go on.
Yeah. So I was looking on eBay. As I do right now, I'm in the process of kind of collecting drivers to build my own speakers from scratch. But I was looking on eBay. I have different keyword searches that I do just to work with like eBay search algorithm and get it to show me the kind of ads that I know are out there. But depending on how people word their stuff, like just to give you an example, right? When people sell vintage gear on eBay, they'll put Western Electric in the title of the ad, even though what they're selling has absolutely nothing to do remotely with Western Electric. They'll just put it in there because they know that people search for that and it'll get them hits. So you kind of have to play with the algorithm when you're looking for vintage gear to just kind of get the results that you want and not look at crap that people are kind of putting in their titles. So anyway, I was looking for a specific pair of woofers, and I was searching for Magnavox. Magnavox, kind of an old name in American hi-fi. And just as I was scrolling through the results, I saw these bookshelf speakers. I almost didn't click on them. I was very close to not clicking on them because the price was just so low. I think it was like 120 or 150 bucks US or something. And I always just thought they were junk, and I kept scrolling. But I did decide to open a new tab and look at them. And then I looked at them from the front, and I kind of saw that the cabinet was interesting looking. It had a nice kind of furniture appeal to it. It had a nice grill cloth. So then, okay, let's look at the back. And then I was like, wow, the back is open. There's like a whole bunch of holes in the back of the rear panel, which is indicative of a certain acoustic design. Um, that's kind of from the radio days of hi-fi, where the rear of the driver is allowed to breathe and not kind of lose the rear wave of the driver's output in a sealed or ported cabin. In a ported cabin, you don't lose it, but it's not the same as having an open back. So I saw the open back. That was really interesting. That caught my eyes right away. The next thing my eyes looked at was, believe it or not, the font on the little panel with the screw terminals, and it also has a little level control, I assume, for the tweeter. The font tells you what era the speaker's from because they use different font faces in the 50s versus the 60s versus the 70s. So this looked like kind of a early 60s font, I would say. And then I kept looking through the pictures because now I was excited, but there was no pictures with the rear panel off. So immediately, what I did is I saw the model number, I Googled it, and I did manage to find a picture of it with the rear cover off. I'm just going to see if I can find it again. Yeah, there it is. And then I actually saw the drivers because that was the next most important thing. Is okay, what's the actual quality of the drivers in here? Is it like, are they like really bottom barrel stuff? Is there any obvious problems that I can notice? And I saw the drivers and I thought, you know what, these don't look bad for 150 bucks. It's a two-way speaker. There's a little tweeter. It has an Alnico magnet. There's a little midwoofer. It also has an Alnico magnet, horseshoe shaped. There's an electrolytic cap in the crossover to the tweeter that can easily be replaced with a nice paper and oil. Um, so I kind of just my spider senses started tingling, and I messaged them to Tom because I thought they were about the right size for what he was looking for, and I said, "Dude, just buy these. These are going to be way better than LS35As. By way better, I mean what he and I collectively know to kind of be good versus kind of what the mass market thinks." And I knew that also that they would have no problem with like a 2 watt amp if that's what indeed he wanted to get. So he put an offer in, I think like pretty good offer, and he got them. So even if they do turn out to be shit, which you never know when you're kind of buying unknown stuff on eBay, you never know. You could have all the good markers and still not be satisfying for one reason or another. But I don't think so. I have good high hopes for these. Um, and he'll let us know in the next episode, I guess, or whenever he gets them.
It says the 14th, so it's quite a while away. But when they get here, and if I do need to change that crossover cap, and maybe who knows what else, but yeah, excited to hear them. Pretty low investment, and that's part of the hunt for me. I just had a set of criteria, and it's been really hard because the LS35A has that reputation, and it's like a 2 watt amp is not going to power an LS35A. Like it's just not. It's a sealed box. You've told me many times. The back EMI is just going to affect maybe the tube amp in some way. Not a good
Yeah.
combo. No, not the synergy I'm looking for. And these came up a week after another pair I was looking at just sold. Yeah, we'll have to see. Next up is the tube amp, and hopefully I get that settled. And
Yeah, so we maybe found you one of those too. I guess the criteria was again small size, right? Um,
yep,
so I just started. My first thought was to get like again sticking with kind of the cheap bastard route. My first thought was to get a console amp from kind of the same era as the Magnavox speakers, because there's a lot of them on eBay. A lot of single-ended EL84 console amps for about $200 to $300. Sometimes they're recapped, sometimes they're not, but they're such simple amps that even a total beginner could recap them. Um, and I was looking at them, and I linked you some, but I think you weren't really interested in that kind of aesthetic or vibe, which I understand. Um,
they just look too dangerous to me.
they're not. I know they look dangerous because they're not meant to be seen. They're meant to sit in the
Yeah,
back of a
yeah.
console, but they're not. There's
A
nothing
different
dangerous
time for
about them.
tube amps where the tubes glow didn't matter. It wasn't
Hmm.
a giant thing. Just like I got my camera and I set the aperture right, and I turned the lights off in my room, and I let it heat up for a few minutes.
Yeah. But what we managed to find, I think, the deal hasn't been confirmed yet, but it's like a little. If, I'm 99% sure it's a Japanese amp. Well, I'm 100% sure it's a Japanese amp. There was a period of time in the 50s to late 60s where the Japanese were manufacturing a lot of tube amps, both for domestic consumption. Also, they were exported to the US under various brand names. Um, Such as Calrad, Olson, names that just they're kind of out of left field if you don't know them, but they were sold in the U.S. under these distribution names. Um, and this one in particular is like really cute. It's kind of a desktop form factor, which is kind of rare for a tube amp of that era, and there's not really any frills with it. I think it's just a volume control and an input selector. Does it even have tone controls? I don't remember.
It has it's all dual mono, left right,
Oh, okay, balance
tone
controls. Yeah,
controls, and then volume controls.
right. And I just took a peek inside. It uses ECL82 output tubes, which are really two tubes in one glass envelope. It's a triode and a beam power tube, so kind of like a tetrode or a pentode, depending which way you want to look at it. Um, and that's the only tube for the actual amp portion of it, and then there's a tube rectifier. So it's really neat, really compact. It has these tiny transformers, but for the speakers that you're getting, it'll be perfectly fine. It'll be more than fine. And usually, when you're looking at those amps, when you're looking at vintage amps in general, you kind of look to the output transformers for a signal of quality. But the console amps and the smaller Japanese integrateds of that time, they all have these kind of loose transformers with the paper. What's it called? Not frames, but laminate. Not laminations. What am I saying? Well, you know what I mean. The paper
Yeah,
insulation. Sorry.
yeah.
So when you look at those, they all kind of look the same, and it's hard to tell which ones are good and which ones are not. So what I usually look to actually as a signal of quality is the power transformer, kind of just how large it is, how impressive it is. And that one, for its size, the power transformer is like almost half the interior of the amp. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I think it should be a good unit. And it's already been recapped, so that saves you the trouble of doing that. If the guy did it properly, which I think he did, I kind of looked inside it. His work was fairly neat. So
Yeah, it looks pretty
uh,
good.
if you get that and hook those up to the Magnavox, you just got yourself a very nice hi-fi system for like, I don't know, $300.
Yeah, most important thing is really that it looks cute, and besides that criteria, tube input, tube output, tube rectified, and that's about it.
Yeah. So I really look forward to kind of the results. I hope that it works out. I'm pretty feeling pretty good that it will. And you can give us like a mini review of it because that's always the most fun part when you kind of just on a whim build a stereo system. Like I told you, I think at last episode maybe the story of how I got my Sony speakers and the Akai receiver, and it was just I didn't know anything about any of it. I just bought it, right? And it didn't cost very much money, and I paid cash, and I brought it home and had a lot of fun. So I'm kind of hoping that you have the same experience.
Yeah, I'm looking to just enjoy it, not really gonna AB anything. I'm kind of anti AB at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah, I used to think it was cool, but it totally burned me out when I was trying to do it with cables. I'm like, this is so like time consuming. I don't enjoy any aspect of this. This is just so I can tell someone I heard a difference in cables. So I'm
right.
kind of just over that. I just want to put it in. I think aesthetically it looks great. I love the color, the faceplate, and the pilot light, as you like to call it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's a good
it
color.
is
So
very cute.
yeah, so I bought something for once. It's very rare. I really dislike buying stuff, but I love deals. So yeah, so if you know anything about me, my CD collection is all deals. Well, 99% of them are deals. I love deals. I'll tell my friends just you buy CDs, even if you don't want to listen to it. I mean, that's kind of bad advice, really. But sometimes that's the thing. It's like if you get a deal, you can appreciate things for a different reason, especially used. The resale value doesn't really matter as much. Like a dollar CD, like who cares? It's worth way more than that if you're being honest about it, and it's
Hmm.
fully lossless. So you can't legally download an album for $1.
No.
No, it costs way more than that. So that's a little bit of my gear update. When it gets here, I'll talk about it more, and I'm just in it for the journey. I mean, you got you recently acquired some gear. How do you feel about it?
Oh, oh yeah, yeah. So in the process of trying to get better sound for the show, I kind of mind gamed myself into buying something I didn't need. So, well, I looked at the audio interface market as it stands today, and kind of just threw up in my mouth a little because everything that I was kind of willing to pay up to about $500 is all like bus powered interfaces, that don't have separate power adapters. They take power off of USB, and they look really cheap and they feel really cheap, and I'm pretty confident that they sound like crap. So I didn't really want to buy one of those. I wanted to step up, but there was just nothing worth stepping up to. So I started looking at used equipment, and it wasn't really that much better. The best deals seemed to be, a really old equipment. I'm talking about from like the mid 2000s, but then you start running into usability and compatibility issues and issues with drivers, with modern operating systems. And it was just like, it seemed like a lose lose situation. So finally, after a lot of deliberation, a deal came up for a what's called a Motu ultralight. I guess Motu stands for Mark of the Unicorn. And this is like a really well regarded interface. It's like $700, has a ton of features, like a Swiss Army knife. But the reality is that I only needed the knife. I only needed the mic pre to actually use the microphone for the show. I didn't need the DAC. I didn't need the headphone jack. I didn't need its DSP. I didn't need its mixing software. And to be honest with you, I mean, I haven't actually tried the mic input yet, but I already feel like a little bit of buyer's remorse. Kind of feel like the audio nerd in me wanted me to buy something better that I didn't need. I'm sure that the mic pre in a $150 Focusrite is not really that much worse than the one in here. It's just this thing just has a ton of features which make it a good value, but it's like you can't turn the fucking screen off. It's really
Yeah,
bright. It has a really bright display. Can't turn the screen off. The DAC sounds okay, but not like $700 good, which is what the thing costs new. I didn't pay that much. The software is very confusing. Uh, and yeah, I don't know. We're going to get the mics. We're going to test it. Obviously, it's going to be good for the show, but I might downgrade to something else. I'm not sure yet.
yeah. I just use the Motu M2, which is their cheapest offering.
Yes, I probably should have gotten one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason the price has increased since I got mine. Like there was already like a huge back order when I
Yeah.
first got mine. It was like $170. I'm like, okay, whatever. It measures good, I guess, if that matters. I don't really. But now it's $200 for the one I have. So I'm just like, is the chips shortage really coming
Yeah,
down
it
to this?
must be a
Yeah.
supply chain thing. I mean, it's probably not the chips, probably like everything else.
Yeah, maybe the chassis. Who knows? But LCD screens, OLEDs. I think yours probably has an OLED screen.
Hmm.
Yeah, just it's it's too much for what we need. I don't think you need 8 channels of, output
No,
and 6 inputs, yeah.
I'm gonna. I think actually what the best thing to do is well, the best thing to do would be to buy a Focusrite, but I'm still like sick mentally. So what I'm probably gonna do is I'm gonna buy a really cheap interface that I know has a good AD section and USB section from the early 2000s. Um, I think I linked it to you before. The Emu. It's by Creative, or it's a sub brand of Creative, or the parent
Oh,
company of
yes.
Creative. I don't remember. That thing used to be really, really popular, and it actually sold for a lot of money back then. The chassis is like it's a really cheap plastic piece of shit, but actually the hardware inside is not bad, and it's really easy to modify them. A lot of people modify them. They get nicer power supplies for them, whatever. The mic pre suck. The headphone amp sucks, but I'm thinking it's good to get one of those and then to build like a DIY mic pre and go into that because I think that's what's going to make the largest difference for what our application actually is, which is voiceover work. So that's probably what I'll do. We'll see.
Something a little more esoteric instead of
Trying to go up market pre-made. Yeah.
yeah, it kind of reflects, how you feel about audio in general. It's like, why would I buy, something from Dealer X website when I can just, get
Yeah.
something no one cares about anymore and, change one thing here, one thing there, build this other thing, get some solder fumes in the mix.
Yeah. Exactly.
I can't wait. I mean, it's exciting. It's exciting, really. Waiting. There's a delay because the blizzard or something in the Midwest or the South. I don't really know where,
Oh, I
but
guess let's talk about the microphones we bought.
okay, let's go for it.
Yeah. So that was another thing is just like the microphone market is a scam. It
Yep,
really is. Like the cheap mics are all like pretty good, but at the same time they're pretty shit. And the expensive mics are all like just
overpriced.
there's nothing special about them whatsoever. They're like barely better inside than the cheap stuff, but they cost many, many, many multiple times the cheap stuff. And it's just a bunch of brands kind of riding on their name recognition and brand value,
Legacy.
legacy. Exactly. It's really sad. And a lot of people don't know any better, right? So that's why the market like thrives the way that it does. People are willing to fork over this money for these mics, and of course, if you're a studio and you have the budget for it, you don't care about value. You just want to have mic X or mic Y. But yeah,
I wanted to add I would love to have a tube microphone. I don't know if it sounds better, but I just like the idea of a tube microphone, even if it is around $5,000, and I would have to get it serviced, and it's already been serviced, and I got to go on Reverb and hunt, and I gotta find people, and I gotta get the matching preamp for it. I would love that, but obviously,
Maybe one day.
yeah, maybe one day. Not today. Definitely not today. Not this week. Not this month.
For
So what did we go
for
with?
today, yeah. So we were trying to do kind of the same thing. We were trying to find that hidden gem, if you will, that no one else knows about. So we found someone in New York. I would shout them out, but A, we haven't tried their product yet, and B, I don't think they even have a website yet. But a very nice person in New York. They gave us a really good deal on a pair of Rode microphones that they have modified with their own microphone capsule. And they've, as far as I'm aware, designed this microphone capsule from the ground up, and they're having it manufactured by an OEM. And it seems to be a really high quality thing. There's a number of similar outfits doing very similar microphone capsules, but from what little I understand and what little I've read, these just seem to be a cut above. So the good thing about the Rode mic is, well, I like Rode gear in general. It's well built. It's a kit, so it comes with like the shock mount and everything already, so that kind of saves you having to buy accessories. And it has a nice body. It's just like it's a premium mic, but it's. I'm sure that this person's capsule is much better than the stock one. So yeah, it's exciting to try it out. And the price was very reasonable. It wasn't really that much more than the actual mic cost itself, brand new.
Yeah, very excited always to try out up and coming brands. People into different aspects of the audio
Trying to
hobby,
do something, from
especially.
scratch. It's very commendable.
Yeah. Like we had Parker, great guy. Always like talking to him. We had Ev. They're doing their own thing. And now the microphone. What are your thoughts on never cyclers? I like to call them
What's a never cycler?
hoarders. They just like to hoard
Hoarding.
like everything.
Hoarding is
Yeah,
it's a very scary thing. It's a very scary, scary thing. Um, First off, I mean, I would hope it means that you have money and you don't actually need to get the money back from the stuff that you don't use. But a lot of times, it's not even like that. People don't even have money and they still hoard, and they just keep buying stuff. And I mean, it's a well documented psychological condition, kind of why, or possibly why people do that, and the negative impact that it can have on the rest of your psyche. Um, yeah, I mean it. I've kind of been there. Like I've been getting better. What's that? Sorry.
kind of.
Kind of. Yeah. Well, there's people much worse off than me, Tom. You better. Yeah, I have a lot of junk in my basement. There was a point in time where, I had money and I was just buying everything that looked cool or semi interesting. And I think I talked about this on the show before. I had an idea for it at the time, what I was going to use it for, no matter how far fetched that idea actually was in reality. Um, and I've just been slowly selling it off over the past year, I guess we could say, but really accelerated over the past 6 months. But yeah, my basement is just filled with random equipment, tone arms, preamps, tuners, radios. Uh, Recently, I had zero amplifiers, but I kind of bought three overnight, so now I have three amps, speaker drivers, cartridges, lots and lots and lots and lots of records, many vinyl records. Um, um, Last night, I think I had free time, so I just sat down and I started pulling stuff off the shelf, vinyl records, and just I looked at it and I was like, "Am I ever going to listen to this?" The answer was no, so I put it in a pile to sell it, and I'm just going to put it like on Kijiji, which is like Canadian Craigslist, for like $2 a pop, and get rid of them because I can't be bothered to list them individually and ship them all. But yeah, hoarding is a very dangerous thing. It weighs you down. Possessions weigh you down in many ways psychologically. So it's you don't have to go the other way and downsize and become an uber minimalist and live in a monk or live in a temple like a monk or anything like that. But you know, you got to consider how much is enough. Why do you need this stuff? Does it make you happy? Does it spark joy, as the Japanese lady says, Marie Kondo or whatever?
Yeah, I think the speakers are gonna spark joy for me.
Yeah, I that's what I'm hoping, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's not, I've been satisfied with like, literally, like, Logitech speakers I got when I was, like, 14, so,
Yeah,
yeah, they don't got a lot of top end, so
overdue for an upgrade.
yeah, slight upgrade. I mean, I've heard other speakers, kind of in the middle of a review, I guess, and, these speakers taught me a lot, the ones I just, finished borrowing. Um, I wouldn't say they sparked too much joy.
Do you wanna say what
Aesthetically
they are, or are you
beautiful.
shy?
No, I'm shy.
Okay.
I'm shy. They're very good, very clear, like, very clear. I was very surprised, but it never got that beauty factor that I'm after.
Mhm.
Like, that beauty factor, ever since, one of my friends, Matt, let me hear his system, I've been like, "Oh, man," like, I knew there was something missing with the beauty, but I thought it was completely worth it because what else do I need? Like, do I want my music to be ugly?
Mhm.
Honest and ugly, or beautiful and luscious? Like, I don't know. I'm going with luscious.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about that a lot recently. There's like a lot of people call it, musicality versus analytical or whatever. I see
Yeah,
that pop up
yeah.
all the time. Those words don't really make any sense, so I like to use words that actually make sense. So, instead of musical, I'll say comfortable, so you can listen to it for a long time and kind of, get sensory pleasure and not really have to, feel like you have to turn it off after an album or you got a headache or anything like that. So that's what I kind of mean by comfort. It's pleasing, right? It's listenable, versus instead of analytical, let's just say clarity. And clarity is kind of a catch-all term for a variety of things, cleanliness, transience. Um, but really, I think what it encapsulates the most is kind of the playback speed, which sounds really weird to say it out loud, but, um, kind of think of it like this: like in live music, right, there is a certain tempo that the musicians are playing at, certain rhythm, a certain tempo, and that tempo, whether it's slow or it's fast, it encapsulates the emotion they're trying to evoke with their work. So if you have a system that, plays stuff back slower, so maybe you use words like relaxed or laid back or lackadaisical, whatever. Or if you have a system that plays things too fast, you can say it's aggressive or, dynamic. There's all sorts of ways you can spin it to make it sound good. But in reality, if you're speeding up or slowing down emotions, playback speed, you're blurring the emotional connection you would otherwise get from the music. So that's kind of what I mean by clarity: is having the right playback speed, not being congested, not being too laid back, not being too forward. So it's kind of a constant balancing act when you're building a system between comfort and clarity. There are certain things that you can do to increase the comfort factor, and there's certain things you can do to increase the clarity factor. And sometimes those are at complete odds with each other, both in the objective domain of design and also the kind of more esoteric domain of design. It's really difficult. It's really hard. If it was easy, everyone could do it and balance it perfectly, but, it's not easy. It's really not easy to even do it for a single component, let alone an entire system, which generally consists of multiple components, right? So, um, you have to think of the whole thing holistically and think that, okay, and this is really what system synergy is when you boil it down: is, okay, if I have this amplifier that has like a short signal path and it kind of focuses on clarity just the way that it's built, the guy tuned it that way and that's what he was going for when he chose the different materials and the circuit and all that. Okay, but I don't want it to be, there's no such thing as too clear, but I don't want it to be uncomfortable to listen to, because if it's uncomfortable, then I'm not going to listen to
Mhm.
it. Defeats the whole purpose, right? So, um, then you have to balance it with the right speakers or the right source that kind of brings that comfort back. Or maybe your system is already good and you want to get this amplifier in. So then you just, if it's a tube amp, you can put different tubes in it, make it more comfortable that way. This kind of tuning is how you get that balance of comfort and clarity. And, That's what system synergy is. I think it's a balancing act, and I really like to get it kind of on a knife's point where I can listen to music that is really aggressive, like a lot of rock music is, especially these days. 1 minute, and then another minute, I could switch to something like folk or classical or whatever, and I don't feel like my ears went from being assaulted to being soothed. Because if you get that feeling, then probably your system leans too much one way or another. So, um,
I've had an experience like that.
yeah, exactly. So,
At a meet, someone had a Sennheiser HD 800S 20th year anniversary that was gold
yeah,
with a, what was it? A BHA-1 and a dangerous convert, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna listen to music I would listen
right,
to if I wanted to enjoy my music collection." Like,
right,
I was like, "Oh, this is one of, like, my key tracks." Maybe it sets my mood a certain way, maybe it makes me feel a certain way, and I'm like, "Okay, let's listen to it." No, I had no biases, I didn't know anything about any of this gear. I'm just like, "Okay, I just enjoyed this headphone earlier,
hmm,
maybe a slightly older version, but, this is a newer version on this other guy's stuff. Let me hear it." And I heard it, and that's probably the only time I ever had a headache in my entire life in audio. I couldn't believe how aggressive and how, like, fatiguing. I didn't wanna say grainy, but it was kind of nauseating.
yeah.
I was very glad no one was really there to, see my reaction, but, like, wow, like, it was kind of awful.
There
Like,
was no comfort in
I
the
wouldn't say too
sound.
much of a good thing. It was too much of a bad thing. I wouldn't I don't know. I don't wanna say, like, I didn't enjoy the gear, but it was the combination, I think, of all 3 pieces.
Right.
Maybe 4 if you wanna count the transport. I'm gonna say, no, the transport probably didn't wasn't the final nail in the coffin there. I think it was the synergy of the headphone and the amplifier. And it's very contested. It is probably the most contested setup I've ever seen in my life. People are like, "Yeah, this thing rocks." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "You know what? I've heard it. I don't like it. I've heard other stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm okay being wrong, but for me, I definitely know it's not my preference."
There are definitely some people that want clarity at all costs, right? And there are some people who want comfort at all costs. And there's different derogatory terms you can use for each of those groups. But I think you and I probably were somewhere in the middle. We want it to be balanced, balance in all things. And what's balanced for one person is definitely too much for another, right? That's where the
Oh,
subjectiveness
yeah.
comes in. It's not like, again, I think we said this in the first episode, maybe the second. It's not so much that we hear differently; we just feel differently about what we each hear collectively. So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's just based on
Like,
experience, based on the music and the type of recordings that you enjoy. But I listen to everything from every era of recorded music in history, so it's really important to be in the middle.
yeah, one of the things that changes sound for me, as controversial as it is like this Belden speaker cable. I think it's called, like, the
Yeah,
9497. Maybe it's
no,
9794,
you're right
I
the
don't
first
know,
time.
but, yeah, I call it the Halloween
Yes.
cable because it's, orange and black. That cable, I think it feels like it has more clarity, but there's definitely a cost to it because it can be definitely too much. But it was the first time I also heard an actual difference in a cable, and, a few months ago, Parker, as he usually does, he goes, I'm gonna dismantle all these preconceived notions of what people think is good because I don't know, he enjoys doing that. So he measured it and he made a foil speaker cable to compete against it, compared it to his old Amazon cable. Subjectively, he enjoyed the Belden
Hmm.
till he measured it, and then and then he disliked it a lot. You measured it to 50 megahertz because that's radio frequency territory, and apparently that matters for him because his amplifier could output at 50 megahertz.
Sure, sure, good.
Yeah, yeah, excluding crossovers. He thinks there's a lot to cables. I'm paraphrasing a
Okay,
lot
yeah, yeah.
that he's saying. There's a lot to cables in their design, their structure, the material choice, even how they're placed, that matters. If you don't wanna believe it or not, I mean, he measured it. He measured foil cables, some more than others. but that cable, I think, is one of the things I use to kind of get the sound I want, and it's also really freaking cheap.
Yeah.
So, I like that cable. I like that little bit of clarity, but, I don't need all of it everywhere. I just like it maybe a little bit in the air, maybe some mid-range and
Well, I think it's interesting that you had those findings. The Belden cable, actually, the reason why it's so liked is because it is very balanced right down the middle. So I think if you use it and you get results that are not balanced, I would actually point somewhere else,
mhm.
personally.
Yeah, I'm curious about the other version, the Japanese market version, the Mark II. I don't know its full name, but the Mark II. I think it's a darker orange.
Oh, I don't think I've seen
You love hookup wire. I forgot.
that. Yeah, I'll talk all day about hookup wire.
Yeah, hookup wire, A plus. Speaker cables, D minus.
Yes, exactly.
If it's not a Belden 9497, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about hookup wire.
Hookup wire? Okay, hookup wire. So,
Is it too esoteric?
no. I mean, yeah, I guess if you can think for yourself and kind of have an individual opinion and not really take other people's words for everything, then what I'm saying may not offend you. Um, when you're building an amplifier, a point to point tube amplifier, right? You have to hook everything up with cable, right? People know that. If you use the same wire throughout the entire amp, and it doesn't matter how good it is or how much you think you like it based on, kind of short listening tests. If you use the same wire throughout the whole amp, you're going to get a dull sound. I don't know why. I can't explain it. There's no measurements for it. But that seems to be the phenomenon that occurs. So what I would recommend for hookup wire, use a few different types. If your amplifier has an input section, an output section, power supply, filament supply, again, we're talking about point to point tube amps, try using different types of hookup wire, even better if it's vintage, different vintages of hookup wire in those different sections. And actually, the results may surprise you. I've confirmed that experiment myself.
Yeah, and I've seen some of your equipment, and it definitely has very old hookup wire inside and different combinations. I haven't heard it personally, but I've heard similar sources and amplifiers, and I've been very impressed.
Yeah, it's just another level of sound tuning. That's what it comes down to. Again, it's all about comfort versus clarity. So if you use one wire throughout the whole thing, the sound becomes too comfortable or it becomes too clear, and then you don't want to listen to it. So it's about finding harmony.
It also isn't the end all be all because you would also just use, a Hoisa cable and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know.
I'm not a cable elitist. Like I actually really dislike most audiophile wire, the expensive stuff. A, because it's a complete ripoff. Most of it's a complete ripoff, but even worse than that is a lot of it sounds worse than cheap stuff that you can buy from a company like Belden. And it doesn't really have anything to do with measurements or anything like that. It's just that when they were trying to do something different, and in the process of trying really hard to do something different, they fucked up the sound. That's really what it comes down to with a lot of this audiophile stuff. Different crazy geometries, um, different materials, silver plating, gold plating, Jesus Christ, alloys, whatever. It's all very obnoxious. So when it comes down to it, if I and you and I are kind of liking the cheap stuff these days in terms of equipment and kind of modest stuff. There's no room for $200 speaker cable, So if I'm going to buy interconnects, I'm going to be looking for something that's cheap and good. And cheap and good means that you can probably go on Amazon and buy it. There's this one company called Hosa. I guess they're US based. And they make pro audio cable, like all sorts of cables, interconnects, mic cords, power cables, speaker cables, whatever. And their interconnects are pretty good. And they're on Amazon for like $10. You can get the version with plastic connectors for $10. There's a slightly upmarket version with Reen connectors, which are really nice. I think made in Germany or something. I don't actually know where Reen is from. Um,
I think Reen is a Nutrix.
Neutrik. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Reen is a sub brand of Neutrik. That's right. And those are like $30 for like a 6 foot pair or whatever. So Hosa cable, HOSA.
HOSA.
They're nice. There's nothing wrong with the sound, you know.
What are those some of those questions? The perception of hearing in musicians, I think.
The perception of hearing in musicians. What about it? Do musicians have better ears than normal people? Is that the question?
According to this, yes.
Uh, what the
It was
book?
written in a book you recommended.
Oh yes, the book by Harry Olson. Well, that was written in the 50s, maybe the 40s. I don't know when the first publication date was on that. So Harry Olson was an acoustics engineer at RCA, Radio Corporation of America, and a very talented one. Musicians in Harry Olson's day was something else from musicians today. Um, there are, and let's just talk about musicians in the classical sense. So classical musicians. Let's narrow it down to people who play instruments in a classical sense. Um, there are a lot of musicians today who are very talented in their technical ability. You know, they can play all the notes perfectly and they can play them at the right tempo, but they're not interesting to listen to. And I'm going to name names because I don't know how else to get the point across. There's a very famous violinist called Hilary Hahn. Very
Oh
famous,
yeah.
kind of like a rock star in classical circles. She's very pretty. She's very talented. Kind of been playing since she was a child, so a child virtuoso. Um, I don't like her playing at all. I have a couple of her CDs that I bought just because I was trying to get into classical music, so I was looking at kind of what was on the charts, listening to a lot of classical FM, and her work was coming up a lot, so I bought a couple of her discs. And I was like, oh, this is okay, cool, you know, Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, nice. I didn't really feel anything. Basically, I shut it off. I couldn't ever listen to the end. And then friend of mine, Dr. John, recommended me um, this, I think, Bulgarian violin. Let me actually get the CD because I want to get her name. One second. All right, I found it. It's Franziska Peach. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. Um, Let me actually see what her nationality is, so I don't get that wrong either. She is, of course, the article is in German, so I'm going to assume that she's Deutsch, and it's with the Symphony Orchestra Berlin, and it's Prokofiev violin concertos. So I bought that disc and I listened to it and I compared it to Hahn's latest release on Deutsche Grammophon, which is I think it's called Berlin, if I'm not mistaken. And she played the exact same Prokofiev violin concerto. And if you just A B them, like it's comical. Like, yes, the Franziska lady has a much nicer orchestra behind her, and they're doing a much better interpretation. But even the solo part of the concerto, she's just playing like way better than Hahn. It's not even funny. But if you were to say that to maybe a classical music critic, they would laugh at you because Hahn is so popular and she's so highly rated by so many people. But um, the reality is that there's no feeling in her playing, at least not for me. It's subjective. I understand that. So to get back to your original question of musicians hearing, it's like it doesn't really mean anything to be a talented musician because what today's conception of musical talent is so out of whack from what it was 70 years ago, that you can't really say that someone who plays an instrument at a high level necessarily has better hearing or better taste. I don't really buy into that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I've heard some, PhDs and music theory play performances, and I just go, "Wow, this sounds robotic, boring, pre-calculated plans, obnoxious." I can just keep going on. There's one performance particularly that just irks me. Like, it's such an awful time. I don't feel any passion when I hear it. But then I listened to this. I think this other guy, he played a similar instrument, and I just thought it was so beautiful. It's really sad because I think that that's a lot about audio too. It's like some people want musicality, but some people confuse finer details for musicality. Like I don't believe they are the same. Like I don't think you can have everything.
Well, yeah, it goes back to the conversation of clarity versus comfort and finding the balance. That's really it. It's really difficult. I mean, it's almost impossible to find a perfect balance. So for most people, then you just have to decide: do I want to slightly err towards clarity, or do I slightly want to err towards comfort? And for me, I'm going to choose to slightly go towards comfort every time because I want to be able to listen for a long time. That's just the priority that I have. If I was only going to listen for one album or a handful of songs every single time I sat down, then it's a slightly different story. But and I'm sorry, I was wrong about the name of the Hillary Hahn disc. It was actually Paris, not Berlin. I got it messed up. But yeah, she was playing with a French radio orchestra, and the other lady had a much nicer Berlin one. But it's just I'm going to link the. We should link the CDs actually in the description. They're on YouTube, so people can listen for themselves and kind of make up their own minds. I'm curious if people can see what I'm talking, or rather, hear what I'm talking about when I talk about the difference between those two performers.
Which kind of brings us to the music section.
Yeah, I guess that will be my recommendation actually for this week is Franziska Piech. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. Procofia Violin Concertos. This is a relatively new release. I think 2019 or 2020. I bought it when it came out. No, 2017. Sorry, but yeah, it's a really good disc. Even if you're not someone who's into classical music, this is not really a difficult listen. So check it out.
Yeah, I wasn't really into classical before we started talking more. There's definitely a lot to classical. There's a lot of classical I really don't
Hmm.
like so much. But the truth is, not all of it can be good.
No.
Not all of it can be good. There's so many aspects to it. Was it the venue? Was it the orchestra? Was it the conductor? Was it the pieces that were done? You can't just be like, oh, you don't like this. It's like, of course, I don't have to like everything. But
Yeah.
all right, moving away from classical, I'm gonna go with one of my favorite compilations. I bought this a few years back, but it's also back up again. It's a remaster. I heard a little bit of it. It still retains a lot of what I enjoyed from the original, but this time I would say it's a little bit more airy, a little bit more hi-fi sounding. If you ever heard the newest remaster of the Metallica self-titled album, Metallica Black, the Black album, it's a lot like that. I don't know who remastered this version, but it is titled Brazil Classics 1. It's a 3 album compilation, but this is the first one. So I assume they're going to come out with two more in the series since the series is 3. Well, there's actually more than 3 in the series, but I digress. It's called Beleza Tropical by the label Luca Bop, and it is Luca Bop is a record label established in 1989 by David Bryan. So for this album, it's pretty much Brazilian classics, bossa nova, samba,
Oh, you mean
etc.
David
And
Byrne, the
there's
Talking Heads guy?
yep,
Oh, okay. Cool.
yeah, yeah. After I bought this at a record store day, um, a few years back, whenever that was, probably 2019, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I could almost date everything back to 2019. It was an album that I didn't understand, but it was in my vinyl phase where when I was really interested in vinyl. I wanted to get some limited editions because, as I stated in the first episode, no, the second episode, you know, limited edition vinyl is $20 now. It's gonna be $60 later. It's gonna be $120 later if they don't print it. Sometimes they don't print stuff 8 years later, but luckily this one's being reprinted. Well, I will say it is a double LP, which I'm not a fan of because the original I got was a single LP. I just don't want to flip a record 4 times. That's too much for me personally. But if it's for you, it's for you. But it's compilation, so play your favorite song. It's kind of like a mixtape. And this song is Gilberto Gil Culo Mombo o El Dorado Negro. So it has two names. Um, Love this track. You really get a sense of I don't want to say space. I mean, I think it's just a new remaster, but there was always this Brazilian bossa nova drum sound that just sounds nothing like a drum. They're actually rubbing part of I think the tom, and it's making this very weird sound. It sounds almost like a tropical bird. You hear it in a lot of tracks. I absolutely love it. It's hypnotizing, mesmerizing, very rhythmic. That's my choice. Brazil Classics 1 on Luca Bop.
Is that a color vinyl?
Of course, it's colored
Okay.
vinyl, double LP colored vinyl in blue and
So it'll be
yellow.
worth a double what you paid for it in a year, maybe triple.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, the cover art is awesome. I think it sounds pretty good. This might be a better digital release in my opinion, but the color vinyl does look cool if you like collecting vinyl. And if I'm being honest, on Bandcamp, it's 20 more bucks plus shipping. So it's not all bad because when I bought mine, I didn't get no digital copy. So I think it's pretty good value, even at 30 bucks.
Com
Digital 10 bucks, pretty
Compilations I
good.
generally prefer on, CD because you can just jump to where you want, right?
Mhm.
But
There's no CD for this one, which is a real
that's
bummer.
stupid.
Maybe they'll come out with it, but, yeah, I mean, check it out. It's on YouTube too. I mean, that's where I first heard it, on YouTube, and then I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna buy that." So,
Mhm.
that now.
Okay, cool.
Alright, thank you everyone for our intermediary episode during our upgrade process.
That's it, we're on all the major players. We're syndicated.
Yep, the Good Sound Club podcast is now syndicated on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.